I'm Scott Ritter. The headline hits like a shockwave. Russia arms Iran with doomsday nukes. Israel given 48 hours. The United States watching, calculating, deciding what happens next. It sounds like the moment the world tips over the edge, the kind of moment people remember years later and say that's when everything changed. But here's the truth that makes this even more dangerous. There is no confirmed evidence that Russia has transferred nuclear weapons to Iran, not one credible intelligence agency, not one verified report, not one satellite image, and yet the fact that this story is spreading fast, aggressively, uncontrollably tells you something even more important than the claim itself. The world is now in a place where a story like this feels possible, and that's where the real danger begins. Because to understand why this headline is so powerful, you have to understand the relationship between Russia and Iran, not the rumors, but the reality. These two countries have been moving closer for years. Military cooperation, intelligence sharing, technology exchanges. Even during the current war, there are growing concerns that Russia has provided Iran with support ranging from surveillance data to upgraded drone technology. That's real, but nuclear weapons, that's something entirely different. Because transferring nuclear weapons is not just another military deal, it would be one of the most extreme violations of international law in modern history. It would shatter the entire global nuclear order overnight. It would trigger consequences that go far beyond sanctions or diplomatic outrage. It would bring the world to the edge of nuclear confrontation, and that's exactly why this claim is so explosive. Now imagine just for a moment that something like this were even partially true, not thousands of warheads, not a massive transfer, but even a small shift technology, materials, or capabilities that bring Iran closer to a nuclear threshold. That alone would be enough to change everything, because Israel's entire security doctrine is built around one core principle: prevent any hostile state in the region from obtaining nuclear weapons, not contain it, not manage it, prevent it at any cost. So when you hear 48-hour warning, it doesn't mean surrender in the traditional sense. It means decision time, a countdown, a moment where leadership evaluates whether to act now or risk facing a far more dangerous future. And history tells us how those decisions tend to go. But before we jump to conclusions, step back and look at what is actually happening right now. The war is already intense. The skies are contested. The sea lanes are unstable. Oil markets are reacting. Governments are on edge. And in the middle of all of that, information is moving faster than ever, faster than verification, faster than confirmation, faster than truth. That's how stories like this spread, not because they are proven, but because they fit the moment, because they align with the fear people already feel, because they seem like the next logical step in a situation that already feels out of control. And that's what makes them powerful. Now let's talk about Russia's position in all of this. Russia has been careful, strategic, calculated. While maintaining strong ties with Iran, it has avoided direct military confrontation with the United States and Israel. Instead, it has operated in a gray zone, providing support, sharing intelligence, strengthening alliances, but stopping short of actions that would trigger immediate escalation. That balance matters, because transferring nuclear weapons would destroy that balance instantly. It would force a response, not a diplomatic response, a military one. And Russia knows that, which is why most analysts agree that while cooperation between Russia and Iran is increasing, there are clear limits to how far that cooperation goes. But here's where things become complicated. Even without nuclear weapons, the situation is already approaching a level of intensity that feels similar, advanced. Missiles, drone swarms, electronic warfare, cyber attacks, all of these tools create effects that in some ways mimic the strategic impact of nuclear deterrence without crossing the nuclear threshold. And that's the space we're in right now, a space where the line between conventional war and something much bigger is becoming harder to see. Now imagine being in a command center right now. You're not just analyzing confirmed intelligence, you're analyzing possibilities. What if this is real? What if it's partially real? What if it's disinformation designed to provoke a reaction? Because every one of those scenarios requires a different response, and the cost of getting it wrong is enormous. That's why even unverified claims can shape real-world decisions. Because leaders don't have the luxury of waiting for perfect information. They have to act based on risk, and right now the risk level is rising. You can see it in the movements: increased military readiness, heightened alert systems, strategic repositioning, not because something has been confirmed, but because something could be true, and that could is enough. Now let's focus on Israel again. If there were even a credible indication that Iran was moving toward nuclear capability with external support, the pressure to act would be immediate, not weeks, not months. Immediate, because once a nuclear capability is fully operational, the window to stop it closes, and after that, the entire strategic equation changes. Deterrence replaces prevention, and deterrence is far more unpredictable. That's why the idea of a 48-hour warning resonates so strongly. It represents that narrow window, that moment before decisions become irreversible. But again, there is no confirmed evidence that such a scenario is unfolding. What we are seeing instead is something different: rapid escalation of tension, a deepening alliance between nations that challenge the existing global order, and an information environment where fear spreads faster than facts. Now, here's the part most people don't think about. Even if this specific claim is false, it still has impact because perception shapes reality. If enough people believe that a major escalation has occurred, it creates pressure on governments to respond. It influences markets. It shifts military posture. It changes the way decisions are made. And in a high-tension environment, those changes can lead to real consequences. That's how escalation happens in the modern world, not always through actions, but through reactions, and sometimes those reactions are based on things that aren't even real. Now step back one more time. Look at the bigger picture. Russia and Iran are closer than they have been in years. The United States is deeply involved in the region. Israel is operating under constant threat. The global system is already under pressure. And in the middle of all of this, narratives like this one are spreading: doomsday nukes, 48-hour warning, world on edge. These are not just headlines, they are signals that the level of tension has reached a point where extreme scenarios feel believable. And when extreme scenarios feel believable, the risk of actual escalation increases because people start preparing for them, acting on them, responding to them, even if they're not real. So, what's actually happening right now? Not a confirmed nuclear transfer, not a verified doomsday scenario, but something just as important: a shift in perception, a shift in how close the world feels to a major turning point. And that shift matters because history shows us that major events don't always begin with clear signals. Sometimes they begin with uncertainty, with confusion, with competing narratives, and only later does the full picture become clear. Right now, we're in that uncertain phase where information is incomplete, where tension is high, where every new development feels like it could be the one that changes everything, and maybe one day something will. But today, what we have is a warning, not the kind of warning in the headline, but a different kind. A warning about how quickly fear can spread, how quickly perception can shift, and how dangerous that can be in a world already on edge. Because in the end, the most powerful weapon isn't always the one that gets deployed. Sometimes it's the one people believe has already been deployed, and right now that belief is spreading faster than anything else, and that might be the most dangerous development of all.